HighBridge, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Rise of Real-Life Superheroes and the Fall of Everything Else by Peter Nowak. Read by Peter Nowak. Author's Note: Many of the individuals in this book maintain secret identities and spoke with me on condition that I not reveal their real names. In such cases, I did my best to verify their identities and the details of what they told me. I noted in a text where I may have had my doubts as far as veracity is concerned. Some individuals are less protective of their alter egos or gave permission to use their real names. Others have been unmasked in other media, court appearances, and public documents, in which case I've used their actual identities as well. Prologue. Inferno. Meanwhile, back in Gotham City, or rather, downtown San Diego, our superheroes find themselves in a heap of trouble. It's a sweaty 90-degree night, and a scowling shirtless man is bounding around them like a boxer circling his opponent. He's well-muscled, over 6 feet tall, sporting the abs and pecs of a professional wrestler. He's wearing white pants and polished black leather shoes that match his cropped, shiny, dark hair. His eyes are glassy, but laser-focused. 2 black, beady pinpoints fixated on the 6 colorfully costumed individuals who are now backing into a defensive semicircle to meet his imminent attack. The shirtless man isn't the only problem, though. An older and clearly drunken gentleman with tanned, leathery skin and white hair tucked beneath a baseball cap is also instigating a fight, threatening on a second front. The air is thick with tension and humidity. You can almost see a collective thought bubble form over the heads of the superheroes, wondering, how did we get ourselves into this mess? The situation arose a few moments earlier when the shirtless man was still fully clothed. Surprised by the costumed people as they casually walked by him, he swatted at one of them, barely missing. When the superheroes didn't react, he followed them, then tried again to get their attention by attempting to force his way into a closed restaurant. It worked. When they stopped to see what the commotion was, he approached them anew. Using the universal gesture for "I want to fight," the shirted man thus became shirtless. The other man, meanwhile, approached from a different direction, swaying from side to side. Wearing a blue t-shirt and green cargo shorts, he was clad in the telltale uniform of a tourist. Like the shirtless man, he set to glaring at his targets, paying special attention to Grim, the tallest member of the costumed group. With a crooked smirk adorning his face, he began to poke Grim in his blue skull mask. Grim took exception. "Sir, please stop," he said. "I'm going to have to stop you if you don't." The man, undaunted by the menacing skull speaking to him, grinned like a mischievous 5-year-old and continued. A showdown here outside Joltin' Joe's gas lamp is now imminent. 2 months ago, 27-year-old Corey Poole and a friend were engaged in a punching game inside the bar named after New York Yankees slugger Joe DiMaggio, and they went too far. Poole took 1 hit too many to the chest, then collapsed and died. Eager to prevent something similar from occurring, Grimm's teammates, self-styled real-life superheroes who call themselves the Extreme Justice League, the XJL, maneuver themselves between the poking man and the bouncing man. The XJL members know from years of experience patrolling San Diego's gas lamp district that bad things tend to happen when such individuals meet. They may have inadvertently created this problem themselves by virtue of their conspicuousness, but it's also possible the 2 men would have run into each other independently, with a conflagration following. It happens all the time. These sorts of combustible elements have a habit of sparking larger blazes. Just like containing a fire on a submarine, compartmentalization is key. Mr. Xtreme, wearing a combat helmet and fatigues, ski goggles, and a purple cape, tries to defuse the bouncing man. "It's okay, dude. Just calm down," he says, his hands up in gentle assurance like he's trying to soothe an angry bear. "No one wants any trouble. Just calm down and let's talk." Grim, who has had enough of the poking, takes the opposite tack. He grabs the older man's wrist and twists downward. The man buckles like a tree felled by a chainsaw, going with the motion smoothly. "I'm sorry for this," Grim says to the man, now prone on the ground, "but I warned you several times." The takedown appears to give the shirtless man second thoughts about starting a tussle. He stops bouncing and his demeanor shifts from hostile to curious. He strikes up a conversation with Mr. Xtreme and Fallen Boy, who is wearing a black flak jacket, military fatigues, and a domino mask. He says his name is Aaron and he's from Arizona. He and his friend, who had been quietly watching the encounter unfold from the sidelines, had been bar hopping in the Gaslamp district. His friend explains that they were waiting for an Uber to pick them up when they spotted the costume group. They just wanted to say hello. That's not entirely true. Aaron had indeed swiped an outstretched hand at Light Fist's head as he passed by him a few moments earlier, but no one on the team had paid it any mind. Light Fist, dressed in green sweats, yellow motocross pads, and ski goggles, hadn't even noticed. The older, now chastened man, meanwhile, needs help. Violet Valkyrie, an African-American woman wearing a purple jacket and sequin bandana across her face, learns his name is Oscar. Marshalling his concentration, Oscar pulls out his phone and dials a number, then hands it to her. His concerned wife answers. The couple are indeed tourists, Violet Valkyrie discovers, and Oscar had ventured into the gas lamp alone for late-night drinks. Now, he's lost and fall down drunk, or rather, take down drunk. A black SUV pulls into the intersection. Figuring it's the Uber that Aaron and his friend had been waiting for, Mr. Xtreme and Fallen Boy usher the duo over to it and bid them goodnight. Grim and Violet Valkyrie help Oscar to his feet. His wife tells Violet Valkyrie they're staying 3 blocks away at the Gaslamp Marriott. Mr. Xtreme and Fallen Boy drape Oscar's arms over their shoulders and help him walk as the SUV pulls away. Fallen Boy tries to keep him cogent with chit-chat. What are your favorite kinds of movies? He asks as they walk. Minor action movies. Oscar mumbles back unintelligibly. The final member of the costumed group, Brick, wearing a black, red, and white hockey jersey, camouflage pants, and a red skull mask, watches his teammates' backs as they walk. Oscar's wife is waiting with arms crossed, brow furrowed at the hotel. She thanks the group and ushers her husband into the lobby. A week later, she will contact the XJL on Facebook and donate $100 to its registered charity. But for now, the team members collectively exhale in relief. The self-proclaimed guardians of downtown San Diego have put out another set of potential fires, dual situations that could have ended much differently, more violently. They may not have stopped the supervillain or even foiled an actual crime, but they served what they see as their purpose anyway. That's definitely our good deed for the day, Mr. Xtreme chuckles. Chapter 1. Flashpoint. Born in New York City in 1916, Alvin Schwartz began his writing career in high school by founding and co-editing a literary magazine. He spent his early adulthood watching his dream of becoming a novelist grow increasingly unlikely as the effects of the Great Depression wore on. Like millions of Americans, he and his wife were in dire financial straits as the 1930s drew to a close. Then, in 1940, Schwartz had a chance encounter with Jack Small, an artist friend who was scraping together a living drawing comic books. Superman had just made his debut and the medium was booming despite the nation's lingering economic malaise. The desperate Schwartz saw Small passing by his apartment building and accosted him in hopes of borrowing some money, but the artist presented him with a potentially better option. Small mentioned that his publisher, Dell, was hiring, which was all the impetus Schwartz needed to give comics writing a try. He later went to the library to do some research. He found a book of Russian fairy tales and adapted one of them into a script. Dell's editors liked it and hired him. His first story appeared in a 1939 issue of Fairy Tale Parade. Several scripts later, Schwartz was at a party hosted by National Allied Publications, the company that would eventually become DC Comics, where a group of editors talked him into writing Batman, another superhero who had recently made a successful debut. Schwartz later described his first effort, an 11-page story in which Batman and his sidekick Robin protect a British dignitary visiting America, as so-so, but it was enough to earn him further commissions. National's editors liked his work so much that they soon handed him the reins to their golden boy, Superman. Schwartz was apprehensive at first. He was comfortable writing Batman, who was essentially a glorified detective, but he wasn't sure he could make a hero with superpowers interesting. It was only after considering Superman's alter ego, Clark Kent, that he found the appeal. There was something necessary about Clark's blandness, that it represented something universal, as though in the ordinariness of each of us there had to be a place of rest, of relief, he later wrote. I didn't yet grasp all the implications of this, except that Superman seemed to highlight that common condition, because in him the extremes were so much greater. The ultra-powerful Man of Steel, alongside the ultra-ordinary Clark Kent. The sharp contrast between the self as non-entity and the self as all-powerful seemed to suggest a secret, private, but universal experience. Schwartz went on to have a distinguished career writing comics and newspaper strips starring Superman and other DC superheroes, including Green Lantern and Wonder Woman. He also achieved his dream of being a novelist in 1952 with Sword of Desire, a psychological detective thriller, followed by 2 more books. He later moved to Canada, where he wrote documentaries for the National Film Board and lectured on superheroes and their symbolism. His 16-year stint with National/DC ultimately garnered him the Bill Finger Award for Excellence in Comic Book Writing in 2006. Despite his successes, Schwartz himself didn't believe his greatest achievement lay on the printed page, but rather in what he managed to create in real life, the actual physical manifestation of Superman. In his 1997 memoir, An Unlikely Prophet, Schwartz wrote about how he was first visited 3 years earlier at his home by a man who identified himself as Thongden, a monk who claimed to be a tulpa, a metaphysical avatar of Tibetan mysticism. Thongden revealed that he had been animated into reality through Schwartz's own subconscious will, and that the writer had done the same to Superman by devoting so much of his psychic energy to the character over the years. A living, breathing Superman was apparently out there, somewhere in the real world. Schwartz didn't believe him at first, and he still had his doubts after continued conversations with Thongden, but he eventually changed his mind after a near disaster at a carnival not long after. He was on a ride inside a cabin resembling a miniature airplane when the ride malfunctioned. I don't know if I can describe it completely. First, there was the supreme effort to visualize Superman so that I could see him, at least with my inner eye. I made, you might say, an imaginative pattern of him. There was above all some greater and more mysterious power that recent events had awakened in me. I do believe that for an instant Superman actually became visible not only to me but to others. I felt the fall of our plane being cushioned, then eased slowly down, while at the same time I felt myself bracing the collapsing shaft, all 50 tons of buckling steel, and lower it gently to the ground. Then I found myself standing on the outside of a small crowd that had gathered around. They were watching people, unhurt, scrambling from the little planes splayed all about. I had apparently left my seat in the plane at some indeterminate point, and I felt as though magically I had flown down. When the excitement died down, Schwartz found himself back in his seat. He reached up to touch his face, but was disappointed to feel his own beard rather than the Man of Steel's immaculately smooth features. Did it actually happen? Did Schwartz really summon forth Superman to save himself and the other frightened people on a ride that day? Or was it an elaborate story dreamed up by a writer who had spent too much of his life fascinated by psychological states and religious symbolism? There's no reason to think that Schwartz, who died in 2011 at the age of 94, didn't believe it. He was deeply interested in metaphysics and saw Superman as more than just a two-dimensional cartoon character. Even if Superman didn't actually exist in the physical world as someone who could be seen and touched, Schwartz had little doubt that he was a spirit that could indeed manifest to some degree. In a note to readers at the conclusion of his memoir, he intimates that his story about Thongden and Superman was one of possibilities, meant to remind us of those moments in our lives that are unknown and unexplainable. In the face of unbending rationality, we need to be reminded to wipe away the dust that so quickly obscures our second vision, he wrote. Whichever way the tale is to be interpreted, Schwartz was right. Superman as an alien being with near-omnipotent powers doesn't physically exist, probably, but the idea behind him is real. Superheroes do exist physically by way of spirit. The world is actually lousy with them. Preludes and Nocturnes. I've been a comic book reader for most of my life, starting in earnest at the age of 10 with Marvel Comics' Uncanny X-Men number 190 in 1985. I'd read the odd Spider-Man and Superman comic books before then, but that particular issue, in which an evil wizard by the name of Kulan Gath transforms Manhattan into a medieval barbarian kingdom, hooked me on superheroes. It combined all the elements I loved as an adolescent: fantasy, science fiction, adventure, good versus evil morality, cool dudes and gals in cool costumes with cooler powers. And, because it was the X-Men, an ongoing saga about a group of genetically advanced mutants struggling to be accepted by the rest of humanity, there was also social commentary. In the first few pages of that issue, a government official suggests that filthy, muty vermin are responsible for the whole Manhattan disaster, only to be chewed out by a military commander for his bigotry. The specter of World War II concentration camps is brought up, a continuing theme revolving around racism and oppression that, I'd discover as I kept reading, has defined X-Men comics throughout their publication history. It was weighty stuff for an impressionable 10-year-old, to be sure, but I was old enough for challenging educational matter, and the suggestion of deeper substance intrigued me. This wasn't just fantasy, where colorful, costume-clad super people fought off alien and other dimensional threats. There were direct links to the real world. Over the next few issues, the heroic X-Men, including the weather-controlling Storm, steel-skinned Colossus, and teleporting Nightcrawler, joined the likes of Captain America, Doctor Strange, and Spider-Man in combating Kulan Gath. The heroes eventually restore fictional New York to its glory, but the effects on me were tangible. I couldn't help but snap up every issue thereafter for the next 10 years or so. The X-Men proved to be the gateway that led me to become one of Marvel's best customers. Before long, I was riding my bicycle to the comic book store every Saturday morning, eagerly spending my allowance on every issue of The Amazing Spider-Man, Captain America, The Avengers, and anything else I could get my hands on. I'd pedal home furiously and have those comics devoured by dinner time. Like many children of the 80s, I strayed from comics in the 90s. The hormonal changes of late teenagehood and early adulthood, combined with the fact that the comic book industry lost its collective mind by catering to speculative investors, more on that in the next chapter, meant I had little time for superheroes. Rock concerts, action movies, and trying to impress girls took over as my preferred interests. But like so many lapsed readers of the era, the recent wave of movies brought me back. They were a trickle at first that quickly turned into a tsunami. Tim Burton's Batman in 1989 paved the way, followed by Bryan Singer's X-Men in 2000 and Sam Raimi's Spider-Man in 2002. This trio of films proved to Hollywood that there was plenty of money in costumed characters. Iron Man kicked off the bonanza in earnest in 2008, and now superheroes dominate pop culture. In 2019, no fewer than 11 superhero movies hit theaters, a new record. Avengers Endgame became the first film in history to reap more than $1 billion at the global box office in just its opening weekend, making it the biggest movie of all time. On TV, at least 39 comic book properties were in various stages of production or development. You'd best believe I've been watching all of it. I've also been reading again since 2013, when Marvel Unlimited launched for smartphones and tablets. The app, offering millions of digitized comic books in exchange for a monthly subscription fee, is effectively the Netflix of superheroes. It has allowed me to go back and frolic in the nostalgia of 80s-era X-Men comics, but also to appreciate the deeper history of how those titles and characters have evolved since their origins in the 60s. More contemporarily, I've been able to see how comics have changed and matured in recent decades to cater to an older audience, those readers like myself who are coming back. All of this is to say that I've got comic books on the brain, which is where this book germinated one fateful night. For as long as I can remember, I've used a special technique for getting to sleep in those instances when it doesn't happen quickly and naturally. Here's the secret. Try not to think about anything real. No school or work thoughts. No musings on what you might have to do tomorrow or next week. No tangents on what you're going to have for breakfast. The real world keeps the conscious mind working, and a busy brain is anathema to sleep. It's better to think about unreality, those things that don't exist or actually impact one's life. For some people, simply counting sheep does the trick. Although sheep do exist, they may as well not for most of us city dwellers. For me, it's figuratively counting superheroes. Sometimes I picture them fighting villains, or each other. Sometimes I mentally list Avengers members by the order in which they joined a team, a trick that works unfailingly. I'm usually asleep by Miss Marvel or so. It may sound dumb to some, but it's relaxing and gets my mind off the day-to-day, replacing it with a healthy dose of nonsense. This was all working nicely until one evening when these two mental states came crashing together, with Batman at the overlapping center of this reality/fantasy Venn diagram. It started with me imagining the Dark Knight patrolling the streets of Gotham City, looking for criminals to thwart. Inevitably, the fateful question percolated in my semi-conscious mind. Why hasn't anyone actually tried this in real life? Batman is, after all, supposedly the most realistic of superheroes. Sure, he has tons of money, but otherwise he doesn't have superpowers. Just a bunch of training and gadgets. Surely someone could pull it off, so why has no one attempted being Batman? The question gnawed at me, to the point where the nonsensical, fantastical thinking that was supposed to lull me to sleep turned into a real, conscious, driving curiosity that could not be quieted. I got up, turned on the computer, and typed real-life superhero into Google. The screen spat back thousands of results, a real eye-opener. Forget sleep, this was too fascinating. A subculture unfolds. Surfing around on the web turns up hundreds of real-life wannabe Batmans. Batmen? All over the world. Some dress up like the fictional Dark Knight himself, but the majority have created their own personas. Like comic book characters, they range dramatically in look and demeanor. From grim and gritty types in military gear and black masks, such as Oregon-based Arachnite and Virginia-based Death's Head Moth, to colorful individuals in spandex and capes like Red Ranger in Seattle and Captain Caregiver in Toronto. Many call themselves real-life superheroes, or RLSH for short, while others prefer to be known as costumed activists or extreme altruists. Some actively try to fight crime while others patrol the streets and hand out food and supplies to the homeless. Some pick up used needles in parks, remove graffiti, and even help little old ladies cross the street. Most are inspired by comic books, though I'd later learn that's not a prerequisite. Defining these individuals collectively, as I would spend the next 2 years trying to do, is more easily done by underlining what they are not. For one thing, they don't actually believe they have superpowers. Or rather, most don't, with the odd exception. We'll get to that in the later chapters. Many real-life superheroes stress that they are just everyday people, that it could be you or me under the mask. The only thing required to be a real-life superhero is the performance of good deeds. That's their main delineation from cosplayers, people who dress up as existing fictional superheroes like, say, Spider-Man or Deadpool. Some cosplayers do indeed raise money for charity, but they don't usually patrol the streets. They tend to stick to attending comic book conventions and parties. Real-life superheroes endeavor to help people in person, face to mask. Real-life superheroes have received a good amount of media attention over the years, appearing in newspaper articles, television reports, and an HBO documentary. One of them, Seattle's Phoenix Jones, was even mocked on an episode of Saturday Night Live for getting his nose broken in a fight. Amazon Prime Video ordered a pilot episode based on Orlando's Master Legend, though the streaming service didn't end up going ahead with the series. Many real-life superheroes team up, creating functional equivalents of the Avengers or the X-Men that regularly patrol the streets of their home cities. There's the Extreme Justice League in San Diego, who deftly avoided a melee in the prologue, the Bay Coast Guardians in St. Petersburg, Florida, the Emerald City Heroes Organization in Seattle, the London chapter of the United Kingdom Initiative in England, the Trillium Guard in Ontario, Canada, and many more. The community has also developed its own support structures. Facebook and the internet in general are replete with groups and websites such as the World Superhero Registry, the Real Life Superheroes Forum, and the Heroes 101 radio podcast, where fledgling do-gooders can get advice on everything from protecting one's secret identity to whether it is appropriate to carry a sword on patrol. Rock and Roll, a real-life superheroine in San Francisco, has written an instructional manual, a true origin story, how to be a real-life superhero in 12 steps, available on Amazon. A number of real-life superheroes, such as Razorhawk in Minneapolis, create and sell custom costumes, masks, and assorted paraphernalia for their fellow adventurers. Zachary Levine, a lawyer in Glendale, California, has advised some members of the community on legal matters, such as being cited for wearing a mask in public, which is illegal in some jurisdictions. For a few years, there was even a school in Las Vegas, the Superhero Foundry, where aspiring superheroes could study the criminal code while learning martial arts and weapons use. This subculture I had discovered appealed to me on several levels. I was initially fascinated to learn that a large number of people were bringing comic books to life, but the further I dug into it, the more I realized it's also a movement whose members are trying to effect positive change in their communities and within themselves. More so than other nerdish subcultures like, say, Trekkies or Bronies, I found this to be a group with something to say about the state of the world, and that was reflective of how society may be failing its members. On the other hand, I also had the same reaction that many people do when they first learn of real-life superheroes. I wondered what was wrong with them. Are they crazy or just naive? Are they the quintessentially stereotypical basement-dwelling virgins who just want attention? It's an easy line of thought to subscribe to, especially given comicdom's long history of being considered escapist kid stuff at best, or a juvenile, unintellectual rot on society at worst. Comedian Bill Maher offered perhaps the most concisely reductive summary of this view on his blog after comics legend Stan Lee died in 2018. The problem is we're using our smarts on stupid stuff, he wrote. I don't think it's a huge stretch to suggest that Donald Trump could only get elected in a country that thinks comic books are important. Out of the basement. The basement virgin stereotype is easy enough to dispel. Real-life superheroes, it turns out, come from all walks of life. Exact demographics are hard to come by, given the relative anonymity many try to maintain, as well as the overall paucity of quantitative studies on the subject. But one such report, a 2016 study by researchers at the University of Sydney in Australia, found the real-life superhero phenomenon to be global, with cross-cultural appeal. Participants identified with a broad range of nationalities and ethnicities, including Irish, Scottish, and Asian. The most said they were American. Of the 42 real-life superheroes surveyed, 3/4 were located in the United States. 32 were male, 3 were female, and the rest didn't indicate. Ages ranged from 18 to 52. Other findings concluded that the average length of a real-life superhero's career was about 7 years, which I found to be accurate. It's likely that some of the characters quoted in this book have decided to hang up their masks and costumes by the time you hear this. The study also found that about 3/4 acted as part of a team, and respondents spent an average of 19 hours per week on their activities, involving both online communications and on-the-street patrols. Just over half said they hid their real identities. 1/4 also said they had first aid skills, while a similar number said they had martial arts or combat training. The community does count a good number of young white men amongst its members, but it's also surprisingly diverse. Nightingale, Violet Valkyrie, and Hot Flash of the Xtreme Justice League in San Diego, Misfit in Los Angeles, Nyx and Saf in New York, Spirit Fox in Seattle, and T.O. Ronin in Toronto are just a few of the active or retired women who have taken up the mask. Grimm in San Diego, Phoenix Jones in Seattle, Captain Black in New Orleans, and Dark Defender in Harrisonburg, Virginia are African American, while Mr. Extreme and Light Fist in San Diego and Samael in Iowa City are of Asian descent. Freedom Fighter and Fallen Boy in San Diego are Hispanic. Age isn't a barrier either. Jaguar and Master Legend, both active in Orlando, are in their 50s, as is Lord Mole in Birmingham, England. Vancouver's Thanatos was active into his 60s before reportedly retiring. Conversely, Seattle's Red Ranger and Liverpool's Black Mercer are both in their 20s and representative of the younger wave of real-life superheroes who are just starting out. San Francisco's Aaron Almanza, also known as Shadarko, identifies as gay, and Zimmer, formerly of New York and now in Austin, Texas, is transgender. Many real-life superheroes consider themselves liberals, but several, including New York's Dark Guardian and San Diego's Mr. Extreme and Urban Avenger, seem more conservative judging by their social media posts. Temper, of the Washington Initiative Group, serves as a council member in the town of Burien, near Seattle, in her civilian identity of Crystal Marks. Some real-life superheroes, such as Orlando's Master Legend or Seattle's Skyman, are day laborers or students who frequently complain on Facebook about their underemployment. Others are firmly middle class, like Icon in St. Petersburg, Florida, who is a systems engineer, Knight in San Diego, who is a teacher, and Urban Knight, who is an automation technician for a car parts company in Windsor, Ontario. Misfit of Los Angeles is both a bodybuilder and a porn actress. It's a perfect cross-section of our society, says Peter Tangen, the Los Angeles photographer behind the Real Life Superhero Project, a website devoted to the community. Tangen befriended a number of real-life superheroes from around North America in 2010 when he brought them together for a photo shoot. He mentions one secretive individual he got to know who claimed to hold a position high up in the U.S. government. When something bad happens in the world, his phone rings, he says. He's in a situation room advising presidents of the United States. I've got as good a verification of that as I can possibly get. Many real-life superheroes themselves had preconceptions of the community before they got involved, only to be proven wrong. None of these guys were the basement virgins I pictured them as, says James Marks, also known as Evocatus, husband of temper. I was surprised to learn that they had mortgages, cars, kids, and families, and that they didn't play World of Warcraft all day long. Most of them were everyday citizens who wanted to do some good on the side.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?